Tamar Herzberg and Jeremy Weiss from the Kibbutz Yad Mordechai in South Israel. Thanks for coming and taking the time to tell us the amazing story of Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. And the story of that kibbutz, I think, is the story in a nutshell of all of Israel and the Jewish people. And so we're very excited to hear. And also we know obviously that Kibbutz Yad Mordechai is very close to the Gaza border. So you have also a law that the kibbutz went through on the October 7 events and terrorist attack. So yeah, today we are exactly 9 months after, like yesterday, it was exactly 9 months after the terror attack happened on Israel, on South Israel, and actually on all of Israel, because I think there is no person that is not affected by what happened. And I think Jeremy might tell us more later, but for now, before I give the word to you, Tamar, I'll introduce you both. There is in Yad Mordechai, there is a museum, and this museum really tells the whole story from before the Holocaust, through the Holocaust, and then after how the kibbutz was found, what fights, battles it had to go through until today. And it's an amazing museum that you, Jeremy, are one of the directors of, and you, Tamar, are the coordinator for exhibitions and presentations like the one tonight. So thank you for taking us online into the story of the museum and the Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. So I'll give the word to you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dina. So, like Dina said, I'm Tamar. My position in the museum right now is curator, which, as you said, means that I'm in charge of exhibitions. But I started as part of the educational department, and that's in many ways still where my heart is. That I'm just not just about the visual presentations, but very much connected to the messages of the museum and what we are going to talk about this evening, which is resistance and resilience, and how this is sort of an inspiring ethos that's being passed away between the generations and is central to Israeli society and to Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. So I sent you the link for this very short video that we prepared recently after October 7th. And the video tells, I think, the framework of what I'm about to talk about. I think we'll show it now, if you can start it now. And after that, I'll expand on some of the things that we're going to see in it.
Are we going to watch the video that you just showed me?
Yeah,
or
what I just sent you.
Okay, all right.
If you could share that.
Yeah. Can everyone see my full screen?
I see it.
Perfect. Can you hear?
Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, named after Mordechai Anielewicz, was established by the members of the Hashomer HaTzair youth movement in Poland on the lands of the Western Negev in 1943. Their worldview was shaped by the values of the Zionist youth movements in the early 20th century. The central values that guided them were the creation of an egalitarian productive society, Zionism, and the realization of the Jewish people's right to sovereignty, aspiration for peace, and critical thinking. Yad Mordechai Museum is an institution for the commemoration and the teaching of the Holocaust and revival. Established in 1968 in Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, 1.5 miles north of Gaza, and led by Abba Kovner and his educational philosophy, the museum is part of a complex including the Mordechai Anielewicz Monument, the 1948 battle site, the grave of the righteous among the nations, Władysław Kowalski. Dedicated to two fundamental events in the history of the Jewish people in the 20th century, the Holocaust and the revival of the State of Israel stands as a symbol of modern Jewish Zionist resistance and resilience. The museum holds a variety of educational activities and events. In a speech to his pupils in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1942, Mordechai Anielewicz expressed this view by saying, "We are in the midst of filth and degeneration. The most difficult struggle of all is the one within ourselves, not to get accustomed and not to adapt to these conditions. Whatever may happen to you, remember always, don't adjust, revolt against the reality." This worldview took on a tangible dimension in the spiritual and physical resistances during the Holocaust. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is one of the main expressions of belief in these values. Among the museum's exhibitions, you will find an exhibition that presents the pre-war Jewish life in Poland. In addition, an exhibition that focuses on the first year of the war and the sections imposed on the Jews by the Nazis. The museum features a unique model of the Warsaw Ghetto, designed and built by Professor Israel Gutman and Holocaust survivor Simcha Rotem-Kazik, a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto. This one-of-a-kind model in the world includes a display of 150 three-dimensional houses that were part of the Warsaw Ghetto when it was sealed off from the outside world in November 1940. The houses are built to a scale of 1 to 100. The appearance of the ghetto and its buildings are based on maps of Warsaw and pre-war photographs of the buildings. Among the ghetto buildings you can see the Great Synagogue on Tlomaki Street, the Nozik Synagogue, the Jewish Cemetery, Janusz Korczak's Orphanage, the Umschlagplatz, Deportation Square, the shops, German factories, Jewish institutions, the ghetto walls, and more. Above the model there is a bridge that visitors stand on, symbolizing the bridge that connected the two parts of the ghetto, which was divided by Chlodna Street. A video mapping display is projected onto the model, depicting life in the Warsaw Ghetto from the day it was sealed off until its destruction in May 1943. Through the model and display, visitors can follow the daily life in the ghetto and the preparations for armed resistance planned for the day the Germans attempted to finally liquidate the ghetto. Since October 7, 2023, the kibbutz in general and the museum in particular have faced unprecedented challenges. On that dark day in October 2023, while Yad Mordechai succeeded in protecting its residents from terrorist incursion attempts, the kibbutz faced a barrage of missiles and mortars fired by Hamas, leading to a critical security situation and serious damage. One of the missiles struck the museum directly, causing significant damage. The missile penetrated the roof and exploded within the Mila 18 bunker exhibit, a poignant reproduction of the command bunker used by Warsaw Ghetto resistance fighters under the leadership of Mordechai Anielewicz. Despite severe damage, the exhibit was not entirely destroyed. However, the damage extended to the museum's infrastructure, electrical system, fire extinguishing systems, and IT and multimedia systems. The DNA of resistance and resilience flows in our veins and is part of our heritage. In the War of Independence in May of 1948, the kibbutz members and the Palmach fought, few against many, without military training, against all odds, drawing inspiration from the resistance of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The spirit and legacy of resistance, resilience, bravery and hope are interwoven through the events of the Holocaust, through 1948 and onward to October 2023. As written in the foundation scroll of the kibbutz in December 1943, in place of the walls of the ghettos, we will build a wall of labor and creativity.
Okay. So that was, as I said, that was the framework. And now I want to take you back to 1943. And I want to ask, I'm going to share screen now. let's do this. Okay. And I want to ask, who is Mordechai Anielewicz? I mean, you've heard his name in the video many times. The kibbutz is named after him. But who is this guy? Where did he grow up? And how did he become the person to lead the Warsaw community, Jewish community of Warsaw, in its really last historical moments? Because and the answer is, and I chose this photo that you're seeing on purpose. You can see, if you Google Mordechai Anielewicz, there may be 4 photos of him that survived in different ways. Some of his pupils kept photos of him and so on. But this one is important because you see him with his friends from the youth movement, wearing the youth movement uniform and sort of, being teenagers. And Mordechai Anielewicz is very much, first and foremost, I would say, a product of the Jewish youth movements of interwar Poland. And as was mentioned before, the values that these youth believed in is yes, socialism and Zionism and peace, like solidarity, equality, but also I think it's an important thing to understand about these youth movements, that these are not youth organizations like we know more of them today. They were very much spontaneous or gatherings, and they were all about their discontent with current culture, their discontent with the grown-ups culture, with bourgeois society, and they're very much, from a very early age, they're critical of what they're seeing, and they're talking in terms of resistance and rebellion. Not necessarily when he's that age. I think in this photo he must be 17 or 18. They're not talking about armed resistance as they ended up doing. They're talking about cultural, about creating a new society that is different, that is better, that is more truthful, and this is like how they educate themselves. This is how they build communities that share these values. And when the war breaks out, and the Second World War breaks in 1939, Mordechai Anielewicz and some of his friends, they escape Warsaw and they reach Vilnius, which is still free, and there is a possibility from there to make aliyah, or immigrate, if you will, to Israel, to what was then mandatory Palestine and British mandatory, and he chooses not to. He tells his friends that are there with him that it's not okay at this point to save your own life. You have a responsibility to the young people that followed you in the youth movement. And he himself is still very, very young, but he thinks of himself in leadership terms. He thinks of himself as someone who is responsible for the community. And so he goes back. He buys a good pair of boots and he goes back. And inside, and by the time he gets back, Jewish community is already confined within the ghetto, and he's at first a leader not in the sense of the entire Jewish community of Warsaw, of the entire ghetto. He's a leader only to the people who voluntarily follow him in the youth movement. They're 15, they're 16, they're 14, but he says something very meaningful for them. We are the resistance. We will not get used to this. We will not get accustomed to the way we're treated. And at first, the way that this resistance is expressed is by education. They continue in underground to learn Hebrew, to read together meaningful cultural texts, to have dreams, to dream about a better future, and they call that resistance. They call that, because resistance for them is maintaining their humanity. At that point, definitely, resistance is maintaining their humanity. And it's only much later, about a year and a half later, when it is clear by then that the intention of the Nazis is extermination of all Jews, that they turn to armed resistance. And most of them have, not most of them, 99% of them have absolutely no military training, no knowledge of how to acquire weapons, and they are Jews constrained inside the ghetto, hungry most of the time, and watched over whatever they do. Everything is forbidden. They're oppressed in so many ways. And most of the community has already, in 43, most of the community has already been taken to Treblinka to extermination. They're left, like the very last of the Jews, maybe 50,000 of an over 400,000 Jews community. And they say, no, we are going to work for an armed resistance, for an uprising, because if no other choice is left for us, then the only choice left is to choose how we die. Not like, we wanted to live, we wanted to create things, we wanted to establish new communities, we wanted to work for a better society. But if this isn't an option, then we want to choose how we die. We die respectably, we die as humans, and we die resisting. We die in protest, saying this is not something that's going to go down quietly. And with this idea and the untrained youth that he had, they managed to not only acquire some weapons through underground, train themselves to a certain extent, but also to become the leaders of the Jewish community, not just the ones who were brought up in the youth movements, but the entire remaining Jewish community. And that uprising, as you know, the uprising of 1943, they last for 3 weeks against the SS forces. And they don't manage to oppress that uprising for 3 weeks. So the vision of resistance, of maintaining our own humanity, of choosing our dignity, that's the vision that encompasses the Jewish community at its very, very last moments of existing in Poland during World War II. And it's so meaningful that it makes the news. They hear about it all over the world. The BBC broadcasts it, and of course, his friends, the members of the Hashomer Hatzair, of the same youth movements that are already in Israel, in Palestine, mandatory Palestine, as pioneers, they hear about it. Not not his name at first. It takes time before they hear about his name, but they hear about the actions, the uprising, and then this is such a moment, a beacon of light for them, because everything they've heard from their families and friends left in Europe since 1949 up to 1943 is destruction and ruins and death and worrisome. And this is such a beacon of light for them that a few months later, on December of 1943, when, sorry, I jumped. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. In December of 1943, the young people that established Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, which was not named Yad Mordechai at that point in time, they stayed for a few years. They came to Israel in 1936, and they stayed in a temporary settlement for a few years. And on December of 1943, they finally have the chance for a permanent settlement in the Negev, in the south of Israel, which is at the time mostly empty and definitely devoid of modern agriculture or even like working irrigation, water, electricity systems. They come to this practically barren land, and they have a chance of permanent settlement. And this is for them the greatest moment of joy, that this is what they've been working for. It's December of 1943. They are actually the first kibbutz of Hashomer Hatzair to be established after 1943 uprising, after April of 1943. So they write in they make this kind of official scroll of the establishing of the kibbutz that doesn't have a name yet, because the previous name was unfit, and Mordechai Anielewicz was not yet known by name. So they don't have a name yet, but they have this scroll where they write their intentions for that place, and they write this sentence that an abbreviation of it was presented in the video, but I want to like focus on it a little bit. They say, in front of the walls of the ghettos, we will build a wall of labor, construction, and creativity. Like for them, it's 1943, they are aware of what's going on in the world, what's happening to their brothers and sisters at those very moments. And they're basically saying our answer to this is building something new, creating something new, making a positive change in the world. We're going to work hard, construct this new society that we've been dreaming of, build a home that basically kibbutz is a home. What you see in the photo, this is a photo, I think, of 46 or 47 of Yad Mordechai. And what you see is the communal dining room, which is basically the first thing that they built, which they ate 3 meals a day in this dining room. So it's quite a simple building, but sweet. And you see the water tower on the hill, which they also built themselves, which was used for irrigation, for their agriculture, and for independent use of the kibbutz. These are things that the kibbutz members built themselves, and to make this place livable and flourishing. And this was their answer to the ghetto. Every child born, every new building, every new agricultural field that they that they were able to, everything they were able to grow and create, this was their answer. And in that same founding document, the next few sentences after this sentence that I read to you talk about the uprising and how they feel connected to the people who led the uprising because they are their friends from the youth movement, and that they will continue with the same spirit. Even though the people who participated in the uprising, they died, we are the bearer of their legacy. And that legacy is to build and to create. And Yad Mordechai, in that capacity, in the first years, that went on for 5 years, 1943 to 1948. They're building a new community, a new settlement in the Negev, and it's pretty successful. In 1948, the eve of the War of Independence, they have 100 kids on the premise. The oldest is 8. They have flourishing agriculture. They have, up to a certain point, up to the decision of partition, good relations with their Arab neighbors. And they're very proud of everything they've created. But like you saw in the video, during the War of Independence, they had to face the Egyptian army, and they. I think what is important to know about that battle, not only that it lasted 6 days, and for 6 days they held the Egyptian army in place and basically held back the attack on Israel, which enabled the IDF to arm itself and to prepare itself. The IDF itself was newly founded at that point, and this is a meaningful battle in the sense of this is part of why Israel was established and lived on and was not destroyed during the 1948 war. So this is a very important battle, and it was fought mainly by the same kibbutzniks who, as I've described, are farmers, educators, and toilers of different odd jobs. And on the eve of the battle, 18th of May, 1948, they already have the intelligence that they are facing, that the battle will start soon, that the Egyptians are preparing for the attack. And the children, on that night, the children are evacuated from the premise by Palmach, but the mothers stay. The women stay because, as I mentioned before, with their ideas about egalitarian society, they think that like the female member is just as important to holding down the fort as the male members, and the mothers stay. And for 6 days, they're fighting for their lives and for the life of that the newly established state of Israel. And after 6 days, they face such dire situation where they cannot last any longer. They don't have the ammunition. They don't have the backup. They have many wounded and dying that can't be helped inside the premise of the kibbutz. And they make the decision to retreat because because for them, they're saying, if we all die, then it's pointless. If we survive, we meet our kids, they're not all orphans. We build this place anew. We will continue to contribute to the state. And they do leave the place. And it is occupied for half a year by Egyptian army. But those 6 days were, as I said, very meaningful. And I think an important thing to notice about the battle is that when they face this dilemma of retreating or not retreating, the name of Anielewicz comes up. They're saying, we named our kibbutz after this man who represents Jewish resistance and holding down the fort. And can we retreat and not bring shame to that name? So they take this very seriously, the idea that they're named after this and they're committed to these ideas. But also, and I'm very glad that that happened, there were people there reasonable enough to say, yes, but Mordechai Anielewicz had nowhere to go. We are in our own country amidst our people, and we have somewhere to go and then start anew. We're not now confined into a ghetto in the middle of hostile, well, continent, really, if you're looking at Europe of Second World War. So they retreat, and they spend half a year, much like today, in a sense, refugees in their own country. The state of Israel lives on, holds back the attacks on it, but they are for 6 months unable to come back to Yad Mordechai, but they maintain the structure of the kibbutz. They find a temporary place and they maintain the societal framework of a community of a kibbutz during that time. And at the time, they are offered different new places to settle that may be easier, but they're saying, no, we built a home there. We want to settle the Negev, the south of Israel, and we are waiting until we can go back to Yad Mordechai. And I brought two pictures from the Liberation Day, November of 1948. Yad Mordechai is released by Israeli forces, by the IDF. The commander of the Southern Front is Yigal Allon. He is the guy with the uniform on the right side of the picture. I hope it's the right side for you too. He's on the right. You can see it. Yigal Allon is the commander of the Southern Front, and he's talking to the representative of the kibbutz. You can see behind him the water tower that I showed you in the previous picture. It's now full of holes because of the Egyptian bombings. And these people came to see the kibbutz on the very first day that it was liberated, and they're talking to him. And I love this photo because you can see their faces are so serious. They're so worried. There's no joy in those faces. They are seriously considering whether they can come back to a place where they've seen 23 of their friends die in front of their eyes, where they have suffered such a severe attack, and whether this will be a good place to raise kids. And on the second pictures, you see one of the first visits of the women members of the kibbutz. But what I think is you see better in that picture, better than the one on the left, is how ruined the kibbutz was. Basically burned to the ground. And these people, with that legacy that they're carrying, with that heritage, are looking at this place that you see in the photo, and they're saying, we will rebuild this place. It will be just as nice, just as good, it'll be better. And they come back. They come back, they build it, they raise their kids in this place, they recruit more people to join them, and they build a thriving society, thriving actually to this day. So I think this is even more than the battle itself, the return and the rebuilding of Yad Mordechai is the epitome of this resilience that we were talking about. And then I want to talk a little bit about this monument. This monument is an expression of commitment. When they come back to Yad Mordechai, they're saying, we said that we are naming this place after him because we're committed to his legacy, and now we need to express it in a more visual way, that nobody can come here and not understand who Mordechai Anielewicz is. But the way that Mordechai Anielewicz is commemorated in this statue created by Nathan Rappaport to the request of Kibbutz Yad Mordechai members in 1951 is, well, it encompasses a lot of the meaning, because you see him not necessarily resembling so much what Mordechai Anielewicz actually looked like, and more representing the idea of Jewish resistance, of Jewish revival. And he's holding in his hand, he's holding a grenade. But if you look at his hands, the hands themselves, they are farmers' hands. And the way he's holding the grenade is not the right way to throw a grenade. It's the right way to sow seeds. So what this statue really means is, if we have to, we will defend ourselves. But what we want to do is to grow crops, to make a life. And you see him like so forward facing, and this calm face. There's nothing fight about him. And I think that was the message, that he's able to defend himself, and he will fight if needed, but he's really about a better future of labor, creativity, and construction, like I said before. Okay, so no, I should have not jumped forward. I wanted to talk a little about today, because Yad Mordechai, for forever, since its establishment, is a settlement that's on the border. It is within the internationally recognized borders of Israel, but it's always on the border. It's always neighboring Gaza, and this relationship has very much shaped also part of its ethos, and definitely in the past, I think, 20 years, even a little more than that now, where the conflict against with the Gaza Strip has been prominent, and they call it in Hebrew svavim. Jeremy, will you help me? Svavim, how do you call svavim? It's like rounds of animosity that erupt from time to time throughout these 20 years, and this area has been the area of what we call the Western Negev, and also sometimes referred to as Gaza envelope, because it surrounds Gaza, which Yad Mordechai is a part of. On one side is subjected to these rounds of animosity for a very long time. Think about it. 20 years means children that are now grown-ups and they don't remember another reality, but also somehow has many strong communities who feel deep connection to the area, and people who choose to live near the border in the Gaza envelope because they feel that despite it all, it is a good place to raise children, because of these strong, creative, forward-thinking communities that you get to be a part of if you live in this area. And of course, October 7th was an event beyond any of our imagination. Even people like us that were connected to this area, to the Western Negev for many years, who spend a lot of time here, there, who have many friends in the area, and we could see that those rounds of animosity, they're not going to end in just rounds and someday there'll be peace and quiet. We need to do something, to be proactive. Even if we could see this was far beyond our worst imaginations. We never, at least I never imagined something of this scale, and so horrific and so cruel to happen to these communities and to Israel as a whole. And the kibbutz was evacuated again, like all of the residents of the Western Negev, of the Gaza envelope, and this raised many memories, especially with the older members of the community of Yad Mordechai, of the first evacuation and of the first time that they had to spend a long time away from Kibbutz Yad Mordechai, and also for the members of the museum. This raised a lot of question of what is our part during this time and what can we do. And the interesting thing is, on both parts of Yad Mordechai as a community that kept also its communal structure, even evacuated in the hotel. They've spent months, about almost half a year, I think, in the hotels, and they kept the connections. They kept, there were all sorts of cultural and social events, and an education system was improvised basically for nothing, so that kids would still have their educational frameworks even away from home. A lot of Israelis volunteered to help in these hotels, in formal and informal education and in other ways. And the thing that I would bring it to you, only it's in Hebrew. They published like a leaflet of news, of kibbutz news inside, even though in the hotel, in this whole horrific situation, they published this sort of news leaflet. And one of the older members of the kibbutz that was evacuated as a child away from the kibbutz, she wrote a letter to her community, and she said, this brings back a lot of memory. But the important thing that I want to tell you is that we came back and we built Yad Mordechai anew. And Yad Mordechai is always our home. It's where the heart is. We have strength as a community, and don't despair. Don't be weakened by this situation, which is temporary. And in fact, Yad Mordechai is one of the kibbutzim that came back. I think one of the only ones where the majority of the population came back, and this, also because the kibbutz itself was not ruined, because the attack on it was stopped on the gates, and the Hamas militants, they did not enter the kibbutz, which is partially because of the resistance and resilience of the kibbutz defenders, which are kibbutz members, and some of them are grandchildren of the ones who fought in 48, but also one should admit that a lot of luck was involved. But they came back, and Yad Mordechai today is once again an active, flourishing community. Now, as a museum,
I think we should allow some questions, maybe, because
I've talked too long. Sorry. Yes, definitely. We should allow some questions. Even though I wanted to show 2 photos, and so as a museum, we had a lot of thoughts about our role, and we created an exhibition that is now moving around Israel. It's been presented in 3 places. It's called The Home on the Border, and it deals with living in Gaza envelope before October 7th. And I wanted to show you these 2 photos of the bees workers that were collecting the bees. Even this is from 2018, even during the times of the fires that Hamas was sending kites and balloons with fire to our fields. And yet, you see the agricultural workers are not deterred. And this photo that was also in the video, but I'm not sure you understand what you see. These are the lines in the sky, are rockets being fired into Yad Mordechai from the Gaza Strip. And in the fields, the tractor is still working, again, undeterred. And this is maybe how we got to where we are, but also I think shows a lot about the spirit of the people living in this area. Okay, and now questions.
Thank you so much, Tamar, for the introduction into the story of Yad Mordechai, the story of the resilience of the people of Israel. And I think it's always better to be there live. And I'm actually excited to know, or I'm curious to know, when the museum will be back and active, and if there's already a plan for it, and when tourists can come back to see the story live in the place.
So officially, we are open. On the Israeli Holocaust Memorial Day, we opened. It's not fully renovated, but it's renovated enough so that it's safe to come in and have the tour in the museum. Educational groups still aren't coming back because of security considerations, not safety, security. But officially, for us, the museum is open, and we're happy to have whoever comes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I really hope I can bring groups at some point to the kibbutz. This year, unfortunately, we had to cancel our trips because people are more interested in helping Israel right now than touring around, which is also good. But yeah. I didn't get too many questions yet. If anyone has a question, just text it, write it in the chat. But I do have a few questions that I think might be interesting for everyone. The first one is, you said earlier that you mentioned how life is at the border. And earlier you also said that it's always been interesting to be in the Gaza envelope, and now it's or dangerous even. And how was that for you? Did ever people from the Gaza Strip, Gazans, came to work in Yad Mordechai? I know they worked in other kibbutzim and villages, but did they also come to Yad Mordechai?
I think so. I'm not.
Yes,
mostly they work in agriculture.
Tamal,
yes, Jeremy, please.
The answer is yes. They worked in agriculture as well in the oil factory that the kibbutz has. And actually, the kibbutz attempted over the many years to assist in specific people from the Gaza Strip, from the Palestinians, in health issues and in financing and in supporting their children. And the kibbutz members felt there was some sort of a friendly atmosphere with these Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. And what is the feeling now?
In general, the feeling is, you have to remember, the majority of the kibbutzim and the villages surrounding Gaza are from what we will call in Israel the left side of the political map. People who believed in a solution of two countries, people who believed that there was peace, that there can be peace. The majority of these peoples after the 7th of October have lost faith in the option of getting to some sort of a agreement with the people from Gaza.
Yeah. Do you have any explanation how it could, how it happened that exactly Yad Mordechai was able to push the terrorists back at the gate to not prevent them from entering?
There are two factors here. One factor is on that Saturday of October 7th, the kibbutz has a tradition every year that they do a sports activity that begins at 8 o'clock in the morning with all their children and family, which includes hiking and running and biking in the agricultural areas. So the security people woke up earlier and prepared themselves to do the regular security. Families were awake already. And when the barrage of missiles landed, people were awake and ran immediately to the safe room. If it would have happened an hour and a half later, when the families were outside, the story would have been different. The second thing is that in the entrance of the kibbutz, there's a small military police base, and special forces from the police were on the way down south to Kfar Aza, but encountered 12 terrorists trying to attempt entering into the kibbutz. And the special forces were able to eliminate and kill the 12 terrorists after half an hour of fighting. So these two elements really secured the kibbutz.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's one question, someone's asking, how many people live in Yad Mordechai right now? As in, did everyone already come back?
The kibbutz has about 850 residents in all the time. Over half of them are kibbutz members, and about 80%, a little over 80% came back already. We expect the remaining 20 to come back as well at some point.
Mm-hmm. So that would be probably families.
Yes, but Yad Mordechai is unique in the sense that a lot of families have come back already. Wow. Most of the Gaza envelope families with young children aren't coming back so fast.
Yeah.
Dina, do you think we could ask the audience to open up, whoever can, and allow themselves to see the faces of the wonderful people that have attended this presentation?
Sure. And we can stop the recording here so we can have more privacy and everyone can open up their mic or camera.
Yes.
Okay, Avia, thank you.